it this weekend that the Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group, which was visiting Singapore and slated to move south to Australia, has been ordered north, toward the Korean peninsula. The order came as President Trump wrapped up his first state visit with Chinese President Xi Jinping, during which North Korea was supposedly a top topic for discussion. The White House had increasingly made it clear that it is prepared to deal with North Korea and their ballistic missile and nuclear programs alone if China will not help out. Another ballistic missile test launched just last week seems to have accelerated this initiative. And a possible major missile or nuclear test on April 15, the locally cherished birthday of Kim Il-sung, would only put more pressure on the Trump regime to act in some way. This all comes as it has been widely reported that Trump's national security team has wrapped up a review of options for taking on the Kim regime. These options have ranged from enacting even more invasive sanctions on Pyongyang, to changes in strategic posture, to direct military actions. The changes in strategic posture options in particular seem to include forward deploying tactical nuclear weapons to South Korea, something that has not occurred since 1991, and would require the approval of the South Korean government. It is uncertain if such a plan would be possible to achieve, seeing as one of South Korea's presidential candidates, Moon Jae-in, looks to take a far less iron-fisted approach with North Korea than his ousted predecessor, and would even put the deployment of the American THAAD anti-ballistic missile defense system up for review. The other frontrunner candidate, Ahn Cheol-soo, looks to increase South Korea's hardline approach toward its pesky neighbor to the north, aside from a longer-term strategic options and possibilities. There is real concern that some sort of military action or showdown will occur once the USS Carl Vinson and her flotilla arrive in the waters off the peninsula. In recent weeks, there have been somewhat vague indications that have pointed toward something like that being in the works. So it is not just the fact that the Navy has suddenly ordered a carrier to head in that direction that is causing anxiety about what's to come. In fact, the Carl Vinson recently left South Korean waters after partaking in large-scale exercises over and around the peninsula. Just last week Trump made it clear that, if China is not going to solve North Korea, we will, and this weekend, the meeting with Xi Jinping didn't seem to result in some overwhelming breakthrough in cooperation, yet alone in agreement on a firm plan between Washington and Beijing on the issue. Still, it seems China was willing to put a bit more pressure on North Korea than before. This morning, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson stated, "President Xi clearly understands, and I think agrees, that the situation has intensified and has reached a certain level of threat that action has to be taken. We are hopeful that we can work together with the Chinese to change the conditions in the minds of the DPRK leadership. And then, at that point, perhaps discussions may be useful. But I think there's a shared view and no disagreement as to how dangerous the situation has become. And I think even China is beginning to recognize that this presents a threat to China's interests as well." There was also this Tillerson quote from his trip to South Korea. "Let me be very clear, the policy of strategic patience has ended. If they, North Korea, elevate the threat of their weapons program to a level that we believe requires action, that option is on the table." Then, this short but ominous statement from Tillerson following North Korea's latest missile launch. North Korea launched yet another intermediate-range ballistic missile. "The United States has spoken enough about North Korea. We have no further comment. So we are left with a bit of a mixed bag as to understanding exactly what comes next." But above all else, Thursday's token attack on Syria's Shayrat air base has led many to think that the president may be more open to grabbing for the military option in the near term than as a last resort when it comes to North Korea. The reality is that the missile attack did no real damage to Assad's war-fighting machine. In fact, it strengthened it drastically, nor did it threaten Assad himself in any way. And no, The attack was not a credible warning to North Korea, it was an omission that Trump's White House may not only react nearsightedly in a military manner to changing events, but also that they are only willing to do it in a highly limited and symbolic way. And North Korea is no Syria. At Kim's fingertips, in addition to nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, is a massive, blunt, and deadly military force, much of which has been contoured to cause as much immediate pain and suffering to South Korea, etc.